Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, you know this is my favorite part to welcome our guests because I know they are coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive, their time. 24 hours is given to every man, every woman. Truly, guys, you ought to learn how to respect and honor time. She will reward you, but you have to understand who she is. Partner with her. Learn to respect and honor her, and I promise she will walk with you, synchronize with you, and bring blessings to you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator, and it has created this beautiful woman that she and I got a chance to talk a little early before, and so I know her heart and where she is. And I want to welcome Penelope here at Threads of Enlightenment. And so thank you so much for honoring us and spending such expensive commodity here with us for this time. Thank you, Penelope. Welcome.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor.
And creating a space where we can have a conversation like this. It's very nourishing.
Thank you. One of the very first questions that I posed to our new family member is, how do you serve mankind? And Penelope, I say that question because I try to invite the audience, the listeners, to begin to look at their life, to investigate it, to see that there's another aspect of us that we still have to do, and that is to serve. How do you serve mankind?
I'm curious, and curiosity leads you to seek answers. And then when you seek answers and you find things out, you may not know definitively, and they may be the wrong answer. And so I spend a lot of my life sharing things that I found out with people around me in the hope that they're useful. You and I talked about how terrible cancer is, and when my family members were going through that, I did deep investigation into other healing methods. We're talking about the spirit being powerful, how you can affect your body, illness by in fact, we know with epigenetics that the endocrine system, your stress levels, your stress hormones are very damaging on the body. So obviously, just the act of deep breathing, meditation, getting alpha waves, the silver mind control type it's therapeutic for your body. And then, of course, nature. Everything we come from nature. Every cell in our body is composed from natural elements here on the earth. So as Socrates said, let food be your medicine and let medicine be your food. So I'm a believer in turning to nature. So when my sister was sick, I became very interested in naturopathic medicine, the power of herbal teas. So that combination of mind and diet to sort of bring yourself into balance. In business, I'm a storyteller. I think stories are powerful. I think we all have story blueprints in our minds that we resonate with. We see symbols, and there's what we call a gestalt. Like if you look at a Christian cross, you'll have flooded with a whole set of associations. If you look at a Nazi swastika, you'll be flooded with a whole set of associations. They may be different depending on your tribal affiliations. So symbols are powerful, stories are powerful. In shamanistic cultures, in Aboriginal cultures, the chief was the one who had the big dream for the tribe, and he would have the dream, and he would say, "This is the dream. This is our story. Let's march towards this mission, this vision, right? This vision quest." So, I've done a lot in even in the mundane world of advertising, because I haven't always been able to make a living as a creative writer, but even in the world of marketing and advertising, everything is about storytelling and hopefully communicating value. So I'm curious and I'm a storyteller. I think and I like to share knowledge in the hope that it helps people and inform people. And so I think that's my purpose, really. And to care, I mean, to form bonds, to, maintain those connections.
Yeah.
So that you're in a position, you're intimate enough with someone, you're close enough in their circle that when they're going through something difficult, if they want to share a joy or they want to share a sorrow, it's always very gratifying when you're the person that they turn to. So if someone calls you and says, I've got great news, I just wanted to call and tell you, or someone calls you and says, I'm in a trauma, something's happening, I can't cope, talk me off the ledge. I think that's always an indication of how well you're serving. How often do people turn to you for support?
Yeah, that is powerful explanation. I think each and every one of us are living a story that we have in our head until we change a few things and realize a few things about the story that we've been repeating over in our mind for as long as we live. We are the writer, the director, and the producer. And so all of us are living within a story. One of the things that you talked about as far as healing, and I know there's a lot of people are looking for this particular manual. In the book of Enoch, there was a manual that was given to, and it also is in the book of Yasher, a manual that was written with all of the herbs, whatever is necessary to heal every single disease. And that book was given to Seth in the Jewish culture. And it's somewhere within that, it's here on this planet, but it's there. And they are looking for it, and they're finding remnants of it within the book of giants that they found in the cave where those young kids are located. But the healing is within the food, and a lot of it has to do with, they found some pieces, it has to do with fermented food and stuff like that. So yeah, I hope they find that in time for us to get a chance to dissect it. But one of the things that we do here, Penelope, at Threads is we jump in this time machine that I call the memory. And we go and visit some of these spaces that we reside for a few years. We call them, as we're moving through and progressing from under mom and dad into our own creation, our own world, adulthood, as they say. The first space that we visit is we have these two individuals traumatized, because everyone is, and they are seeing the world differently based on their individual trauma and history and family and all of these type things. But they fell in love and they're together, and they are now going to deposit stories, data into you that will cause you to create stories. What was your family like?
Well, I grew up in the working class north of England, and I think Americans don't always understand how any class or caste system. Of course, in America, we have slavery and Jim Crow, but there are cultures in India, wherever you have a caste system and you put people into layers of what's called your station. So when I was growing up, you couldn't move above your station. There was no social mobility, right? If you were working class. The year that I went to college, only 6% of working class children went to university. So that's 6 out of 100 attending university. Yeah. So I grew up in that environment of feeling that I just couldn't break a rock ceiling, let alone a class ceiling. And as you know, when people are in poverty, because my family were in woolen mills and coal mines. My grandfather went almost a mile underground and crawled in water with a miner's lamp and chipped away at the rock face with a pickaxe and took a little snap tin, a tin box with fat on bread, drippings on bread and cold tea.
Wow.
So it was true. It was true slavery. And he was stunted, it was dark. He would come up from underground and literally, crawling through water, no machinery, just chipping away at the rock face. and would spend every minute in the sunshine. He really glorified the sunshine, light, living in darkness for most of the week. He really loved light. And he had a greenhouse, and he would grow tomatoes and cucumbers. And when we were kids talking about patience, we'd be in there and and he'd say, look, did you see the tomato just grew? You missed it. Watch the tomatoes grow. So I think just the intergenerational, they've proven it. The town I came from gets some of the least light in the British Isles because of where it is next to the Pennines and where it's located. So just people who are in poverty are in crisis every day because they're literally trying. They're at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, right? They're literally trying to keep body and soul together in the face of incredible odds. But then the flip side of that is incredible resilience, incredible humor, because if you don't have control of things, you have to reduce everything to absurdity so that you can laugh at it. And then incredible community. So I grew up where people couldn't afford, so if you were a painter and decorator, you'd barter with someone who could you'd decorate their house, they'd fix your car. So it seemed hard growing up, but then having moved through different circles and different cultures and different countries, I look back and in many ways, that community is happier. Because my mum used to say, you should be satisfied with your lot. I just want to make sure that my Mac is charging. I have it plugged in. Excuse me, Ken. It's just flashing a red light. And I don't know why. Hang on a sec. I'll be right back. That's that reassuring ping that is charging. So, I think also comes with finding pleasure in the moment, simple pleasures, simple abundance, right? Being in a greenhouse, watching tomatoes grow, because that you got to go back underground on Monday. My mum used to say, loved having enough money to do the big shop. And the big shop is when you can go and actually get, buy in treats like boiled ham. So I think it's a double-edged sword. It's not until you have perspective on it that you understand the gift that it was, while acknowledging the trauma. And I grew up in a community where therapy was poo-pooed. It was a rich person problem, right? But I found therapy very therapeutic. I found that being able to, like you said, you and I were talking, the key to life is understanding how you work, right? It's understanding how you can change your mind or transform yourself, basically. So I think there is a danger of too much rumination. Abigail Schreier just wrote a book called Bad Therapy, where when we just dwell on our problems, it becomes an analysis paralysis. It becomes crippling. But there is something to be said about metabolizing trauma, processing it, and kind of performing a kind of alchemy where you, like I just did, you understand what the trauma was and what it did to you, and hopefully you recover from it and transcend it. And at the same time, you understand the superpowers that it gave you in terms of, providing resilience, perspective, appreciation. So that was, then I was the first in my family to be educated, and I had to go away to school, a working class girl in sort of a middle upper class environment where people thought I talked funny, all about code switching and how one dialect at home, the other dialect when we were with polite folks. So that was hard. I felt less than, I felt inadequate. And then I moved down to London to work, and I was completely alone in a bedsit in Kilburn with just a mattress on the floor, and would get the tube into London to this entry-level job that I had a production company, because I wanted to, write films and, be shot out of the cannon into instant success. And they had me answering phones, which was unfortunate because I always transpose numbers. So literally 9 out of 10 people would get a phone message with the phone number wrong. I remember sitting in Covent Garden, and I'll never forget it. I was so alone. And Covent Garden is where the opera house is and the markets, and watching all these Londoners go about their business, and they belong there and they fit there. And I was Ruth crying amid the alien corn, I was alone. I just remember sitting on that bench in Covent Garden. I can still, if I think about it, I can still recall the feeling. It was just absolute loneliness and abandonment, and feeling like I'd grown out of where I was coming from, but I hadn't yet grown into where I was going. And then I moved to New York and alone, and that was tenuous. It's a typical immigrant story. I came with nothing, looking to make my fortune, and Manhattan is a tough town. It's a very tough town, and it was a culture shock. And that was very destabilizing. If you're surrounded by too much challenge and too much change, it does become destabilizing. Because it's too challenging to everything that you know and understand about the world. But the more you can go into the opposites, the more you can tolerate of that, right? I think the better. If you hug your own shores and hug only what you know. So I think the trick is to challenge yourself, stress test yourself, challenge yourself enough that you're growing and you're having growing pain, but not so much that you're defeated because you've literally overextended, what you're capable of in that. You've got to advance, digest.
Yeah.
And work your way. And then death, bereavement, losing people that I loved, and feeling like if I was clever enough, I'd figure out a way to keep them alive. That has bereavement is, I hate to see, even pets. There's just, I can't, I just hate to see suffering. I can't detach myself from it. And it's not good, really, because if you can't detach yourself, if you become too upset in a situation like that, you can't help. That's why they say the best social workers have got that compassion, but they've got sort of an emotional detachment that allows them to be practical and come up with practical solutions rather than just, sitting on the floor and crying with people.
Yeah. I remember, Penelope, when I had to learn that lesson. And I've said this a couple of times before, where it was my son. I would be telling them about my life and say, hey, you guys don't take this road. It's tough stuff. Don't do it. And as a dad, just wanting the best for your kids. And then one day my son comes and he tells me he's taking that same road. And my heart fell out of my chest because I know how difficult that road is going to be for him. And I remember I was very upset, but I didn't express anything. I was just trying to listen and hold it together, because I know also where he is, because I was there before in that painful place. And this thought came to me. It was as if someone spoke it to me aloud. I heard it, but it was inside. Compassionate detachment. And I remember looking at my son going, compassionate, what? And I'm thinking, oh, what does that mean? And sure enough, I was escorted in the journey of what that means. I remember I looked at my son, and my initial response was to scream and yell. But after that phrase came, compassionate detachment, my entire being slowed down emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I looked at him and I said, I love you. I'll walk it with you. And after that conversation, it was days after I went into my meditation to really get a full understanding of what that means. And in my meditation, I received the answer was that I must be compassionate to him, but detach myself from him, so to allow him the privilege and the honor to go on this journey by himself. But I am there to walk with him when he needs me. But he's not, in my mind, he's not alone, because I know I'll be there for him. But the compassionate piece, the detachment piece, was I had to love him enough to allow him to go through this this life, because he chose it to a degree. And so once I realized what it is, I knew my responsibility was simply to love my son. Love him, never judge him.
In Buddhism, they say that enlightenment is a bird with two wings, compassion and wisdom. And you're talking about the wisdom to detach. And I think my mother was an amazing mother in that she had a very difficult life and she faced up to it. And they say the best thing that you can do for your child is instill confidence. And confidence means literally, self-confidence literally means faith in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom had this way of when I would ring her and the chips were really down and she could hear that I was sort of wobbling and thinking I couldn't manage it. And she used to say, "You're all right. You've got a broad back." And what she's saying, you can shoulder it.
Yeah.
And you need to, because again, going back to the shaman, which is what you are, a shaman changes someone's reality by changing what they believe. So if your mom tells you, we do it with our little kids when they fall down before they have a chance to cry. We say, "You're fine. You're fine. Come here, get up." So you've got to instill confidence in your kids that their body, mind, and spirit will not fail them. And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you're hovering over your kid and worried, and I've got to, I have a tendency to do it because, like you, I don't want my kids to hurt. I don't want them to struggle. And, my mother used to say, "You're so busy giving your children what you didn't have that you're not giving them what you did have."
Yeah.
And
Wow.
as you're alluding to with your son, you don't want him to hurt, but you don't want to rob him of the victory of triumphing.
Yeah.
That's right. Is that right?
Yep.
Triumphing over adversity like you've done. So don't rob him. We don't rob them of that. But as a parent, it's rough to watch. You want to turn your head away when your kids are hurting.
Oh yeah, it was singly one of the most hardest lessons I had to learn, was to allow that to happen. But I would always encourage them and tell them that my hope is that they would not be in their situation, that pain, that circumstances, because we have visitation of life and situations that come, and I would teach them how to meditate and how to tap into the to the soul and the mind, the subconscious mind. I would tell them, my goal is not that you don't feel any pain. My intention and my goal and my life, what I want for you, is that you are not in there 1 second longer than you need to be.
Yeah.
So I would tell them, learn, meditate, search for the answers because you are capable, and do not allow yourself to be there a second longer than you need to be. And I would always tell them, quiet yourself. The answer is in you.
Mm-hmm.
Quiet yourself, and it will arise and come to you. So here you are, Penelope. Here's this girl that I've seen some trauma, some lifestyle trauma, and based on her class system, if you will, that she was born into. And yet she was able to be the very first to move, and if you will, to move from that class to step into a new arena. That newness, of course, as you said, you have difficulty trying to fit in there, outgrew the other class, but you can't find yourself in the others because it's not familiar to you. And as you're there, you said loneliness is one of the forces that you became acquainted with. While you were in here and you're in this space of loneliness, you talked about moving to New York as well, experiencing all these challenges. When mom spoke to you and you spoke to mom and she said, how were you doing there? How were you surviving, Penelope?
I survived okay on the surface. I worked in diners at 5:30 in the morning. And I think I was brought up to not show difficulty. We were brought up to be very stoic. There's nothing you can do about it, so you might as well just get on with it. Mm-hmm. So I also had this feeling that I couldn't unburden myself, which is why when I went into therapy, it was a relief because I could actually talk to someone. And I had a very good counselor. He was black belt in karate. And he did a lot in prisons. He was very pragmatic and no nonsense. When I first went in, I said, "Where are the tissues?" He said, "We don't cry in here. We solve problems." And I thought, sounds like I'm in the right place. He said to me, "Oh, I went, this is very personal, but, I had an anxiety attack and passed out in New York once, and I wound up in St. Vincent, and the doctor guy interviewed me, and he said, you're going to be okay. You'll figure it out. You're smart. You'll figure it out." And this counselor I had said, people don't understand how they work, that this pain is originating from some confusion within you, some cognitive dissonance, some inability to see clearly. And if you become, this is why I like Buddhism so much, because so much of it is focused on mind training, right? One thought leads to another. Really, if you lie in bed at night and you've had a diet of negative thinking that day, you're going to feel really bad. And then you start to connect the dots, don't you? And you say, "Oh, I'm in this state because I thought these things and because I did these things." And so bottom line, there were times when that pain, and everybody knows this, the pain feels unmanageable. It just feels that you want to drill a hole in the top of your head and climb out, but you can't. You're trapped in here. And so what it did for me is pain is a great motivator. So I said, well, it's got to be a solution to this. I just can't keep walking around feeling so rotten. And so becoming curious and figuring out, what are these techniques? How do I diagnose? And I tell you, over the years, I can pretty much diagnose. I know why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling and what to do about it. And I get very, I know that, what is it, like 12 veterans a day are killing themselves. And I always, I always think, when people kill themselves, it means that they've come to the end of the line in terms of believing that they can affect change and improve their situation. They're in such a miasma of negativity and darkness that they think the only way out is to end it. And of course, in the Buddhist tradition, there is no way out, because you just wake up on the other side and you still got to deal with all of that, karmic stuff. So I just think I wish we could do something nationally, come up with national mind training for the psychology of achievement. I mean, in any community, Black community, poorest community, the psychology of achievement, if you can teach people the psychology that will lead to their achievement and their enlightenment, that's the answer. There's only so much you can do from the outside in, right?
Yeah.
You have to teach people how to do the things from the inside out, which is like you teaching your son to meditate, right? Because you know that is a great tool. If he becomes distressed or overwhelmed, that if he can sit and breathe deeply and slow down his thinking and get a hold of his thoughts and put himself on a different, or just witness his thoughts, right? See them come, see them go, how transient they are. And every time I hear that someone's killed themselves, it's like, it's that last bad thought that would have passed. But when you get a succession of bad thoughts that come, and they're never ending, you come to believe that it's this negativity, these bad thoughts are never ever going to end. That's why I think mind training is critical. People can learn that they can replace those bad thoughts with different thoughts, or they can at least understand that it is just thinking, thinking. If you get involved in the 12-step programs as alcoholics recover, all of that negativity that they've been pushing down and drinking and medicating and trying to run away from, all of those thoughts start to surface, and it can be terrifying. And so they go to these meetings in community fellowship, and they get that support, and people say, it's just stinking thinking, and just hang on, and better thoughts will come. Do these things, work the program, and better thoughts will come. And then faith comes, because it's the promise of things. What is that? Promise of evidence of evidence
not seen.
Promise of things, evidence of things not seen yet. So I'm a big believer in that. If I could wave a magic wand, I would get every kid in America would be trained to have the superpower of mind training and psychology of achievement, because everyone can do it.
Yeah, it is something that I don't think the programmers within the educational system has any interest in that. It truly has to come from men and women that are enlightened, parents especially, to begin to teach their children. Because as I was going through my journey and becoming aware of my responsibility of reprogramming my mind, we would also, everything I learned, I taught my kids. So whatever I was learning and discovering within my journey to help me through, I would sit down and bring them and tell them, hey, this is what I'm learning. And this is a practice. So let me show you guys, and you take it from there. So they were a part of the journey in the sense that any and everything I learned, I gave it to them. And people would say about my children when they were young boys that they were so matured over their age and so forth because of what I was offering them, because I was learning as well. And so it's a shame because they don't teach anything when it comes to life and how to manage pain and life and all these different things. If they start imagine if they start within a kindergarten, to have these little children starting to learn about meditation and controlling the power of the mind, what we would do in a generation or two, and how we would affect the world. It's amazing, but
Well,
they will not do it.
Mahatma Gandhi, the great soul.
Mm-hmm.
Mahatma means great soul. He was a Jain, and if you read his book, which I recommend to people, My Experiments with the Truth,
Yeah.
he actually formed a school in India where he didn't teach academics. He taught yoga. Of course, he, as a Jain, he believed in reincarnation, so he believed that we came into life with certain skills and talents, and so it was a metaphysical education, doing exactly what you're talking. And I don't know if when your kids went to school in kindergarten, they would do like this if they agreed with someone.
Yeah.
If some kids want to jump in, if someone says something that they could, and the teacher would say, no, don't interrupt, just do this. So while you were talking, I was doing this because I did that with my son. Everything that I read, I really wanted him to learn how to manage himself. And it gets a bit tricky in high school because they want to pull away from their mom. But by the time he read all the books, he's actually more erudite in some areas than I am now. He gave me the Nag Hammadi for Christmas the other year. And when he was in college, we would literally have 3-hour conversations because he would be studying some metaphysical, some philosophical exploration, and he'd call me and we'd talk for 3 hours about it. And I think that is one of the greatest joys of my life, having a son. And I'm proud to say that he was sort of a small, sensitive kid. He was a little bit of an outcast, and he's reconnected with all his school friends, and they go to him for support. If they've got a problem, they call up Matthew. And I was just saying to him the other night how proud I am because that's the way he's of service to people. He's really able to kind of sit with them. He would be a great therapist. I don't think he wants to do it, but as an avocation, that's sort of his role in his friend group. He's the one that people go and unload and unburden themselves with. So, but I just want to say that you have to stay attached to your children, because to go back to what you said about being conditioned from the outside and propagandized, if you don't have that silver cord staying attached to your children and really having that influence, and because I say to my kids, nobody, swan dive off a cliff for you. No one cares as much as I do. So you have to maintain that connection and that attachment so that what you're saying to them is hopefully drowning out all of the
noise
around.
Yeah. I had spoken to them and told them, I said, look, guys, I don't care what you do. If you kill someone, you come and you sit down with me and we'll figure out how we're going to handle it.
Yeah, I agree.
And I used that because I know they were young, and I wanted to show that drastic swing so that they can get it. And they're some of my best friends. So here you are, Penelope, you are in all of this stuff that is going on, and you did say you had anxiety attack, and then you walked into this counsel's office and no tears. How old were you when you did that? And what eventually happened to you to say, okay, enough. I need to find something. I could sense that I'm coming too close to the end. What was it that brought you there, and how did you begin to pursue that therapist?
It was just constant, the pearl is made in the oyster from the constant irritation of the grain of sand. The
Yeah.
pearl is trying to get rid of the irritation. The oyster is trying to rid itself of this irritating sand or stone, and that's how the pearl is formed, because it's
Mm-hmm.
trying to put the substance around it. So I was in a constant state of being overextended and feeling like that I was alone in America, feeling that there's some difficult things that happened. It's a tough town. It can be a ruthless town. Codes of conduct, the way I thought relationships were supposed to go and how people were supposed to be treated, sometimes got violated. Other times, you're happily surprised. You meet like-minded people who are wonderful. But the bottom line was I was just constantly upset. In fact, when I went to the counselor, he said, "You may be the most upset person I've ever treated." I was just really, really upset. And he said that your core is not strong enough. You're crumbly in the center. And that's why you're constantly, and I grew up in an environment where I had to be hyper vigilant
Mm-hmm.
because of, drinking and violence around me. And I don't want to overstate that, but hypervigilance is not good. They
Yeah.
know in dealing with kids that grow up with a lot of stress and anxiety and poverty and, all of the problems that ensue from that their brain forms differently. You have different neuroconnections, your endocrine system works differently. You get flooded with fear more. You're triggered more. It's called constellating. So a scary thing could happen, or you could be in a meeting and someone is a little aggressive, and for someone who feels calm and stable and got good boundaries and they know no one can hurt them, they can stay relaxed. But for a kid who's been in a trouble situation, that can be a trigger to they constellate and become afraid.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just about getting a hold of my taking, physiologically taking control to try and reduce the the stress hormones. And then, but it was just this constant upset. And I remember he was a black belt, and I was afraid of being hurt all the time. I felt threatened in so many ways, in ways that were not real. It was my imagination. You see a rope and you think it's a snake. It's not. It's just a rope if you look more closely. But by then your hair's on fire. You're in panic mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I just remember this guy, Bob. He was wonderful. I owe him such a debt, saying to me, "I have a 6th-degree black belt in karate, and I also have a 6th-degree black belt in psychology. And when I'm finished with you, you'll feel safe. No one will hurt you mentally, physically, or emotionally ever again." And I remember thinking, "Oh, that sounds good." And also, he said, "I'm going to teach you how you work, so that your mind is not controlling you, so that you're not being overrun, you're not being overwhelmed, you're not being controlled by these states. You're going to be able to tease them apart and understand how to change your perception, or work with whatever is going on." And so
What a
it
blessing.
was a gift. It was a gift.
What a
It's
blessing
fantastic.
to find him, Penelope. What a blessing to find a martial artist as a therapist, because he will understand the workings of the mind, the thoughts, and how one can become the designer when you begin to understand your thoughts. I tell people the thought field will have millions of crazy stuff in there. And when one goes on the journey, the purpose of the journey is to learn how to become a farmer, if you will, to cut down those ones that do not relate to you. And as you begin to trim those away, you will learn how to decipher which ones is necessary to entertain because you want a specific outcome as a result. And so the only place that I knew how to attain that I don't want to say mastery, but become more capable of managing was through meditation. As you are sitting with him and learning of yourself, what did you discover about Penelope?
I think it's always good to discover your own uniqueness. We're not unique. I mean, we're, as human beings, there's a lot of, but like that little snowflake analogy, we are sort of a unique composition of experiences and biology. And so I became excited that I was able to, I had these tools to break out of a mundane life. So it sort of gave me creative power, really. I mean,
Yeah.
I love creativity in the sense that, you know, I'm a storyteller. I love to write, but I think I started my own business. I've always been independent. If I don't like something, I can move on. Except with people, I tend to want to hold on to people. And he also taught me that the success to relationships is the proper distance, that
Mm-hmm.
there are people that can come very close to you and you feel safe. And then there are people that you have to keep a little bit more at arm's length and so on and so forth. And that may be nothing to do with them. That may be just the kind of reaction that they triggering you, so that you don't have a meeting of the minds and you're not able to relax, like where you and I are talking right now. We're vibing on the same, and you're getting my deepest, darkest secrets out of me, Ken. I don't know how you're doing it, but you are. And so, you know, I regret that, because I'd like to be close to everyone, but it's just not possible with the way that I am and the way that other people affect you. But the bottom line was, it gave me this feeling of, you know, people talk about being a co-creator with God.
Mm-hmm.
It really gave me this empowerment in the sense that I understood I didn't have to just live in the box that was defined for me. I didn't have to swallow, and I don't. I'm very heterodox in my thinking. As soon as
Yeah.
something becomes orthodoxy and people are telling me, you know, the majority is thinking a certain way, it doesn't matter if I've always believed that. I'm going to go, hang on a minute, let me just go around and look at it from the other side.
Yeah.
That, you know, you need constant movement. You can't have homeostasis. You know,
Yes.
we're always fighting entropy. And I think that, and so it just gave me a lot of confidence that I could be the boss of my own life, figure out things for myself. I don't have to listen to things. I don't have to swallow things that I don't believe. I can go off and be curious and find out for myself. And even if I'm wrong, I can keep searching. And I don't have to succumb to what you were talking about
Yeah.
earlier, which is just this bombardment of people telling me how I'm supposed to think, I'm supposed to live. I can
Yeah.
I can live from the inside out. That's what therapy did for me. And as I get older, you know, I see people who are peers, they're sort of coming to the end, you know, like in their careers, and they feel like they're on this glide path. I don't. I feel like I'm promoting this book, and it's like this
Yeah.
whole new adventure that I'm going on. So I just, you know, it's like when you're a kid and you're finding out about the world, and you just get up in the morning and you
Yeah.
find, well, I remember my son coming to me and asking me, I think it was Jim Morrison or something, or it's some, you know, rock. Do you know about this guy? I found this guy. It's great when your kids introduce you to stuff. And so you kind of get that childlike sense of discovery again, don't you?
Yeah.
When you're in the driver's seat, like sky's
Yeah.
the limit. So that's what it
It
did for
is.
me. And
That is
listen,
awesome, Annie.
I bounce off the wall some days. I don't want to pretend that I made a direct path as the crow flies. No, I still meander. I still bounce off the walls. You say, I can't believe I did that again. Not again. You know, how many more times do I have to learn this painful lesson? But at least I'm in a process for doing that, you know, for
Yeah,
effecting change.
it becomes easier. There is no such thing as a linear walk. And I use this example all the time. When we jump into that plane going to whatever destination we're going to, it is never a linear flight. In fact, that flight, in some cases, most flights will have turbulence. Some of them will be more intense than others, but
Yeah.
all flights will have some degree of turbulence. And so that turbulence are situations that come into our life that will throw us a little off of that linear walk, because it's not linear. And so those disturbance, and each disturbance is different than the other one. But the pilot has an instrument that is called his North Star, that he is able to trust that North Star more than all this noise and the turbulence that is going on there. So when we are on our journey and we have those turbulence that come into our life, depending on whatever degree that is, we are going to make some backtracks. We're going to sway a little here, sway a little there. But that North Star is still pulling us forward, taking us to that journey. And the journey and that flight is for the rest of your life, guys. So once you understand that, then you understand that there's no such thing as perfection. And when you understand that there's no such thing as perfection, that's when life becomes really interesting, because you have to then surrender to certain aspects of yourself that you are not, that you're afraid to surrender to, and that is your inner man. Yeah, and because when he begins to take control, that switch is a painful thing, because your natural mind is telling you, no, man, don't go there. But your inner compass, your North Star, is saying, I got you, let go. And that's one of the hardest things to do, is that transition. But that transition is not permanent. It is, we lose our minds. I still do. I find myself in situations that I'm like, what the heck just happened?
Listeners don't know this, but I had a very hectic week, and I thought our appointment was yesterday, and I'm trying to, beat my way into your studio, and you're interviewing somebody. And then I said, I've just momentarily lost my marbles. And
yeah, it happens. But I think that's the stuff that makes life, gives life flavor. It keeps us humble. It keeps us walking with empathy. It keeps us in love. It keeps us honoring others. That's what I believe. Why it does happen, it keeps reminding, because if we get perfect, most of us will lose our mind and start going after people. But when we see our imperfection on a daily basis, it keeps us humble, so that when we sit and stand before someone, we know we are not anything over them, and we are able to honor that individual that sits and stands before us. And so we could engage in a wonderful conversation where we can learn of each other at a deeper level, to assist each other to move through from our pain. So here's your teacher, your sixth degree black belt. Got you all comfortable now. You're entrepreneur. You got this gravitas about you now. This girl that back in the day that was a mess. Now she is understanding how to be a creator on a daily basis. When you began to do that, Penelope, how did you, that woman now, began to dress herself in the morning, her attitudes, all those things? What did you begin to notice about you as you are implementing all those tools in your life to assist you to become this creator?
Well, at a very superficial level, I let my hair go grey, or arctic blonde, as I like to call it. I began to resist all of those, outward voices about beauty. And not to be crass or cliche, but I believe there is an inner beauty that comes from wisdom and confidence. And so I tried to take that route and stop fighting Father Time with every Clairol product. And, so that was one thing. And that stripped a lot of time waste out of my life, because I sort of go out clothed in my spirit and my intellect now. I don't need, obviously I have to tidy myself up, but I just don't spend a lot of time worrying about silly things like that. And I understand that Jesus said, be as little children. And I think for me, that means, my husband always says, you can't go from A to Z, just go from A to B. And we thwart ourselves when we think that we can, you talked about this plane that's flying and it's being buffeted. You have to roll with the punches. So when I embark on any kind of business, and I tell my kids this, it's never say, will I succeed or will I fail? Say, I wonder what's going to happen. And then you're free to just move into the future, freaking out if you don't get the response that what you want. Of course you do freak out, because we're not perfect, but as a North Star's guiding light, it is better to be curious about outcomes than to feel like, and that's why people who are, it's cliche, but people who are afraid of failure never succeed. Because,
Yeah.
Winston Churchill said that success is the ability to move from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm. And I
Yeah.
believe that, because when I look back on my life, I don't see it's successful by my measure in that I've accomplished what I want: marriage, children, work, creativity, relationships. But at the time, I felt like I was failing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was failure, failure, failure. But it amounted to success, paradoxically. You know what I mean? So when I'm in working with new entrepreneurs, I say, throw away your illusion. I know the venture capitalists are asking for a 5-year plan and for you to know exactly where you need to be. Throw that away and go from A to B. Go from meet the day and deal with reality. There's a if I was interested in getting tattoos, and I'm not, there's a Buddhist expression: "This being so, what must I do?" And to me, that grounds you in the reality of not what is happening now and what do I have to do about it, whether it's unpalatable or not. What is happening? Because if you're looking through rose-tinted glasses and you want it to be a certain way, and therefore you're perceiving it that way, that's a recipe for disaster. You've got to be in touch with reality about yourself and other people, and deal with, to the best of your ability, what you perceive as reality, and not go chasing just your illusion of how you think it should be. So, and I just wanted to mention to you, since words are very precious to me, and I studied linguistics and the origin of words, compassion literally means being with the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
It's, they talk about the passion of the Christ on the cross, the suffering of Christ. So compassion for yourself is being able to be with the suffering and be with the suffering of, and people think it's this kindness, but it's not. It's the ability to abide with.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
The scripture says that Jesus Christ had compassion and healed them. He identified with their pain, their suffering, and because he could identify with, he wanted to rescue them from it.
Yeah.
And so he was able to heal them. And so compassion will always propel you to do something. And usually it's pointed to an individual, to people, to relieve some type of pain because you have the ability to do so. And it's really different than other things. So here you are. When did you begin to incorporate writing? Because you've written several books, and I've been listening to you talk, and at no point in your conversation did you say you love writing at all, or was interested in it. When did it become a passion, if you will, and how did you get there?
It's always being a passion. I remember writing when I was 6 years old.
I knew it was there, Penelope. That's why I asked that question, because I knew it would bring it out, because that thing is not just something that pops up. It's always traveling with us. And so I wanted to ask you that question because I knew you were going to go back to the genesis of it. So there you go. Go ahead.
When I can remember it now, embarrassed to recite it, but when I was 6 years old, I wrote a dopey poem. It started something like, I wondered, hang on a minute, I can't remember, I can't recall it, it will come. But I just remember writing this poem, and the teacher reading it out loud and reading. I was a voracious reader. In the 6-week holiday, the big holiday when I was a kid, I'd get all of these books, Tolstoy, War and Peace, and I would just get up in the morning and the sun would be shining. I think, I can just stay here and read all day. And then when you read great stories, I want to tell those stories. And I became very aware of the shamanistic power of storytelling, because we are formulated to respond to stories.
Mm-hmm.
We always read into a story, a political candidate or whatever. We always read a story into it, right? We have archetypes, and we say, oh, this is a Superman character, this is a villain, it's just what the mind does. It's very often it has got nothing to do with the person, but we tend to project a role or a character onto them. So I was always aware of the power of storytelling. And then it was hard to make a living. I came to New York. I was at the American Folk Theatre. It became very hard to make a living as a creative writer. And so I got a job in advertising and public relations. And I always joke that if I can't write the great American novel, I can write all the things on the back of the ketchup bottles.
Mhm.
Even if you're just writing ad copy or a press release, just write every day. And then, as time went on and I got sort of control of my life and my kids were growing and not so many day-to-day things pulling at me, I settled down to write and professionally, I ghostwrite with business executives. I co-write books. I probably write 100 to 150,000 words a year.
Wow.
A lot of it very, very boring stuff. But when you do a piece of creative writing, and the initial drafts are hard, but then I always say it's heaven
Yeah.
when you start to polish the words and then you listen to the cadence, the syntax, and you tighten it up. It's like woodworking. It's like fine sanding, and you go
Yeah.
in the zone, and that's my zone. I go in, and when I'm writing, and it's bliss for me to
Yeah.
fine tune writing. I love it.
That's
So
beautiful. I love that explanation. Stories. Jesus told stories because he
yeah.
understood the power of stories. We call those stories parables.
Mm-hmm.
Now, within the parables and the stories, when you tell stories, it appeals to both thinker, the right brain thinker and the left brain thinker.
Yeah.
The right brain and all you have those that deal with facts, and then you have those that deal with imagery and all that. So when within the housing of a story, a parable in back in those days has all the data, the information, and so both sides, right brain and left brain,
Yeah.
is very appealing to them, and
That's
so
right.
they're able to digest the information easier than if it was strictly books and stuff like that. Some of them would never get it. But in a story, it has, and it initiates both both sides of the brain. And everyone is happy because everyone will be able to understand exactly what they get out of that. They will receive their truth from that individual story. So yeah, it's very powerful words. It's the accumulation, how it's arranged. Because I tell people, and all of you guys have been listening to our conversation with Penelope. You know how I feel about books. Books house power. It houses energy. Those words are able to leap from those pages and jump inside of you and change your life forever. How do I know that? Because it's happened to me many times. And I always try to educate an individual. When you go to a book, just don't pick it up and just go there excited. Because if you go excited, your hormones and your imagination and all those things become activated, and you will approach that book differently than if you just pick it up and drop that, because you'll miss a lot. But if you're excited, it sets your mind to see things that will not be alerted to it if it wasn't. So please find yourself your little area and get relaxed. Penelope has several books, and we are going to put all her stuff, because you need to get her stuff, to get her books, because she is talking about all the things we are talking about now in our books, about being in that dark space, finding the way out, all of those things. And that's why you came to Threads of Enlightenment, to listen, because you want to learn how to come out from a dark space to light. And so we'll provide all of her info. So here you are. You got, how did the first book, Penelope, come together? Because the kids are grown. This woman now, this Supergirl, has learned how to take all of her pain and began to strip things away, move. She has learned how to reprogram her mind, her thoughts, feels. She's much more proficient in dealing with all of these emotional trauma that comes in situation. And then she's going to say, you know what? I'm going to write a book. How did that come about, Penelope? How did the concept come about? And when you sat down to put pen to paper, as you were, for a lack of better imagery, if as you were vomiting all of that data that you had stored inside of you, how did it feel? And when you finished it, what did you do?
Well, I've written sort of four. I wrote every book has an origin story that is fascinating.
Yeah.
I took my husband in the early 2000s to BB King's gospel brunch in Manhattan to see the Harlem Gospel Choir.
Yeah.
And it's like church, it's just it's like pumping 500 pounds of air in your spirit. And Alan Bailey came on stage. Alan Bailey founded
I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's one of those guys that he just laughs at everything. He's passed on now, God rest his soul. Long story short, I went up to him and I just said, I'm so fascinated by you in this choir. Would you be interested in writing a biography? And I wrote a book with him it's called Angels, and it was originally called Singing God's Work, and then it was reissued at Angels in Harlem. And he had this amazing story, grew up in the 40s, Jim Crow in Harlem, poverty stricken, and big part of the civil rights movement. He knew Miles Davis. He was Miles Davis was cranky. He did not like me, but he loved Alan. He was Miles Davis's confidant. He escorted Nina Simone. He toured he got himself into show business as a touring crew with Michael Jackson, the Jackson 5, the Commodores. He knew Muhammad Ali. He would go to Ali's Pennsylvania farm, and Ali would get up in the morning and put like work boots on. And he said, you either run with me or you chop logs, but we're all getting up. We're all going to be disciplined. And then he'd come back and eat like a dozen eggs and a pound of bacon or whatever. And so Alan, partly responsible for the entertainment when they did the Rumble in the Jungle with Ali and George Foreman. And then he worked with Coretta Scott King and was really instrumental in getting Martin Luther King Day established. And he knew Percy, I forget his last name, but Malcolm X's lawyer. March on Washington, he arranged the Harlem contingent to go down to see Dr. King. So how can you let somebody leave this world without getting all of that down, right, and captured for years? And we would, this is so funny, when he was in Harlem, there were rats, and he woke up one day and the rat was chewing his cheek. And I said to him, that's nothing. When I was growing up. And he was so comical because he was listening to me tell these stories of, these sad stories about growing up in the north of England. And he just looked at me and he said, you're blacker than I am. He always said, it's not the color, it's the flavor. But he was a wonderful man, and he toured the choir, and he transformed a lot of lives of getting people who had amazing voices, getting them to tour the world and sing. They even toured in communist China. So that was that story. And then The Apple is the story of a Holocaust survivor who fabricated part of his story and got into a lot of trouble because it he went on Oprah, and Penguin was going to do a big book. And then all of the Holocaust historians were furious because they said he'd made something up, which he did. He made up this romantic incident. And so it created this big cultural sort of furor. And then I was asked if I'd do the book with him, but the story behind the story. So what was his true Holocaust story? Why did he tell the lie, what fabrication? And he only had a second grade education because he was put into ghettos and concentration camps when he was 8 years old. So he never had any formal education. Listen, you can fault him, definitely, but I was like, where is the humanity? If someone survives the trauma that he did, being sent off watching his mother be sent off to be gassed in Treblinka. We're in a culture that's all about trauma. And so maybe understanding his trauma, and it's not excusing what he did, but it's certainly an explanation. So I wound up writing that book, which is sort of the story behind the story of Herman Rosenblat's Holocaust romance. He was on Oprah. Oprah was pretty upset because she felt duped by him. So that was that. And then I wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence at Work with my husband, which is more about understanding businesses runs on emotions just like life does. People think sometimes when they go into the office, it's all facts and bean counting and, that there's a business agenda, but everyone has a personal agenda. So that was fun. Yeah. And then this book, The Angel Scroll, is my magnum opus in that it's the story of a seeker and how seeking begins with deep pain. It's about a young woman in New York whose husband dies young, and she feels amputated. And then she begins to have strange psychic experiences. She channels a painting, and then she finds out that her painting is one of 3 that has been predicted by a newly found Dead Sea Scroll called the Angel Scroll. And so she's having these, like we said, this deep pain calls us to the man inside says, right? And so the book is it's a thriller and a mystery in the sense that it's pursuing these 3 paintings to see if, when they're assembled, it's prophesied that they will in effect miracles through a direct experience. Because through art, music, like you were saying about the brain, when we read, we have to sort of translate. It's a meta, right? We have to translate it into experience. Whereas when you listen to a piece of music or you look at a work of art, it's more of a direct experience. So she's on this journey to put these 3 paintings together to see if they are miraculous, if they're sort of a new form of gospel or good news. And at the same time that she does that, she's trying to understand, why am I having visions? Why am I channeling a painting? Why is my third eye opening? Why am I seeing things? Why? And she gets a lot of different explanations, just like I did. An anthropologist tells her about Celtic druids and goddess worship and the power of the feminine. And a Buddhist monk talks about the play of the mind, how everything is the play of the mind. And a Benedictine monk who believes in the prophecy conveys his deep love of Jesus and his deep belief in the Christian message. And the doctor says, forget all that. You have a small aneurysm and it's causing an optical illusion. So this poor woman has now got to decide, as we all do, sometimes life seems very stable, and then all of a sudden things happen, traumatic things happen, and it begins to seem like a bad dream or a mirage, and you feel like you don't know what is real anymore. It's a hallucination. And of course, the Buddhists believe that waking life is just a persistent dream. That when we sleep at night, that is a more unstable, chaotic dream. Who is it? Alexander David Neely was a famous French 19th century, I think, a traveler, and she traveled to Tibet and studied with lamas, which was an amazing thing for a woman to do, in her big skirts and dresses, like battling through the Himalayas. And she said that she studied with these lamas, and she realized that when she awoke from sleep, and the dream of sleep, she knew that she was dreaming still.
Yeah.
So she sort of understood the illusory nature of how we kind of create out there, but everything is really in here, and we sort of project. So that book is all of the research and all of the things that interested me, I sort of put into the heroine, and try to make a good story out of it, but also provoke people into being curious about things. Jesus in India. Jesus was alleged to have traveled to India. He was in a scene, and they were very much influenced by Hinduism. So there are a lot of sort of fringe theories that I think are interesting. You don't have to believe them, but it's worthwhile to go and take a look about what different people say. So that's the book that just came out at the end of June. So that's the book that I'm promoting at the moment.
And congratulations on that. And as I mentioned before, guys, we're going to provide all of her links so that you can have access to her, because grab those books, because we get to see some of our human conditions and how we are affected as a group by those human conditions. And I want to challenge you guys, man. If you're in a dark space, find someone that you can trust and talk to. Penelope mentioned that earlier. Find someone. Don't stay there. Don't allow the thoughts to capture you and cause you to have one of those final thoughts. Find help, seek help. And in seeking, you will find, it says, seek and ye shall find. So that's the principle, but you got to move, step out, and things will begin to happen in your life. Penelope, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a good conversation.
Thank you for having me. It's been great. And like I say, you just got a way of pulling things out of people.
I'm glad I was able to pull some things out of you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. It was and is a powerful one.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.